Time to fasten your seatbelts. I'm sorry. Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be reviewing Fast X, which drops this weekend. This is the 10th film in the Fast and Furious saga. 11th if you count the spin-off Hobbs and Shaw. Forgot to light that guy up. But anyways, this comes to us from the director of The Incredible Hulk. I'm not really familiar with any of his other work, but the story of this film centers around Dom and the rest of his giant extended family as they try to escape the wrath of Dante, a new character played by Jason Momoa, who is the son of the main antagonist of Fast 5, who is now out for revenge. It should also be noted that this is now supposedly the first part in a trilogy of films that's going to sort of end out and close this Fast series, this Fast saga. It was originally going to be a two-part ending, but of course Universal is never going to turn down a pretty penny. And Vin Diesel just seems to be so engrossed in this world that he genuinely thinks he's made something as intricate as Lord of the Rings. I don't know, I remember reading some comment about that. Full disclosure, for me, these movies have been running on fumes for a while now. I really enjoyed the first one for its simplicity. It's just about street racing and sort of low-scale heists. 5 through 7 were pretty solid, but for me, as soon as they moved past Paul Walker's send-off, this series has just been a great big mess. Each entry has been middling at best. And at worst, they've been, well, F9. They're just not really about the cars and the street racing anymore. It's become such a soap opera that you can't really enjoy the elements that I personally enjoy in the better entries in the franchise. Ever since 7, it's sort of been more about how can we up the ante? How can we make more ridiculous stunts that top what came before, even if we break every law of physics in the process? Who cares about logistics, right? To give Fast X some credit, it does actually tone down that a little bit. Don't get me wrong, there's still plenty of mind-numbingly ludicrous things that happen. For instance, people survive car crashes that they clearly shouldn't. Unless they're like a red shirt bad guy, if that's the case, then if a car crashes, it explodes on impact. But if it has one of our main characters in it, they'll roll a couple of times, then kick out the windshield and walk away with not even a bruise. Another sequence in the film involves two main characters fighting each other, and there's a lot of glass getting smashed and people falling onto smashed glass, and somehow they're getting up without a single noticeable cut. The point is, this is a much more tolerable degree of ridiculousness than probably Fast 8 and 9 combined. There's just nobody goes to space here, thankfully. I'm also thankful that they got rid of the really over-the-top self-awareness that was in F9. There was a sequence in that movie in which Tyrese Gibson's character, Roman, is being fired upon by 20 dudes with ARs and they all miss him somehow, and then a scene later he jokes with another character that they might be superheroes and they might be invincible. I really just, I don't mind these movies being a little self-aware, but that took it too far. Yes, in this movie the characters do still feel like superheroes at times that can survive things that most human beings wouldn't. I like that they tone down the really over-the-top self-awareness. This is a very crowded film, so I kind of want to not linger on any one topic for too long, so let's get the positives out of the way. First of all, Jason Momoa absolutely kills it as this villain, Dante. He's probably the most memorable main villain in the entire franchise. He gets a lot of screen time. He knows exactly what kind of movie he's in, and he makes the absolute most of it. He's the kind of guy that says things that'll make you laugh and cringe at the same time, and that's a really tough balance to manage, and he's just a great actor, and he pulls that off really well. And I also like that he's a little sillier. It's a sort of a nice, refreshing take on a character in this franchise, because Dom, to me, has never really been that interesting. He's just so monotone, and you got Vin Diesel's super low voice. He delivers every line of dialogue the same. It's like every line of his feels like it's designed for the trailer, not for an actual film. One of my big issues with F9, among many others, is John Cena and the whole attempt to inject this backstory of Dom's long-lost brother coming back. In this movie, I actually really like John Cena. I'm glad that they sort of made him, again, a little less serious of a character. He's very jokey in this, and I found him to be pretty funny. It was also nice to see him as a member of the team, the family. Alan Ritchson and Brie Larson both are sort of standout newcomers to the series. I thought both of their characters were entertaining. Maybe don't add a lot to the movie that needed to be there, but they definitely add some entertainment value. Although I'm pretty convinced that the only reason they're in this movie is because they couldn't get Kurt Russell to play the character that he played in some of the previous entries, because these characters are associated with Kurt Russell's. Daniela Melchior is in this as well, and I didn't know that she was in the film until I saw it. And it's always nice to see her pop up and stuff. I thought she was a huge standout in the Suicide Squad, and of course she had like a brief role in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. She was a standout here as well, but I wish they utilized her character more. It is sort of a double-edged sword, though, because her character is related to somebody from the past, and it gets so tiresome when they introduce all of these characters that have these complicated relationships, and it's like you're constantly trying to keep track of each one and how they're related to the overall family, and it really adds to that soap opera element that this franchise has. So if you really dig that, I guess you'll probably love that about this. I will say there's also a couple of really solid action sequences in here. I mean, most fast movies have one or two standouts, but this one has a couple. For me, the sequence involving a giant bomb rolling through the streets of Rome and they have to disarm it, that was actually pretty entertaining. It certainly ends in a way that I don't buy at all, and it comes dangerously close to that F9 level of ridiculousness, but still pretty entertaining. I also really like the street racing scene that we've seen in the trailer. It just sort of, it harkens back to the roots of this series, the roots that I think were a lot more just generally strong than anything that this franchise has done since then. But the story here, unfortunately, is a big mess. There are a lot of characters being juggled here, sort of like Infinity War. I've seen a lot of people comparing this movie to Infinity War and saying that this is the Infinity War of the Fast franchise. I don't really like that comparison because, again, it just reminds me that everything in this feels so ridiculous that they may as well be superheroes. But unlike Infinity War, this movie really struggles to balance this group of characters because they sort of divide up throughout the film and go on their own separate missions. Some of them just don't feel like they need to be there at all. Han, Tej, Roman, and a couple of our other characters find themselves doing their own thing, and their subplot feels almost completely inconsequential. They're sort of just there for Tej and Roman to be the comic relief, as they've always been. And I don't really mind their banter at all. It's funny occasionally, but in this movie there's sort of a rift that forms in between them. I didn't really care for that at all. It just sort of drags the movie down and makes it longer than it needs to be. In fact, this whole subplot does. The film is also extremely predictable. If I'm talking about overall story, this movie went almost entirely beat for beat the way I thought it would, barring one or two surprises that we actually do get. And some of the stuff with Dom's son was really bizarre. I don't really know what to say about it without spoiling it, but he does some things in this movie that are questionable, and I'm surprised how briefly the movie brushes over that. Again, it just feels like the script here, not a whole lot of attention was put into that. And it also just does feel like a very repetitive film. Again, there's not much that they can do to really top what came before because they've done it all at this point. The least that I was sort of hoping for in this movie, despite the fact that I went in with low expectations, is that it would actually have some sort of climactic feel to it, feel like we're building towards something because this is supposed to be the beginning of the end. But the cliffhanger ending here kind of feels like a slap in the face. It's one of those cliffhangers where you know exactly how it's going to play out. They want it to be all suspenseful and like, oh, how is this going to resolve? And you know exactly how it's going to go. And judging by the point where this one ends, I don't see how we're going to get two more films with this same central storyline, and I assume the same villain. And perhaps my biggest problem with really the last 4 or 5 entries as a whole is that it just feels like there are no stakes. With a few exceptions, for every character they kill off, it seems like they resurrect one from the dead in the most ridiculous, nonsensical way possible. Villains who did terrible things a couple films ago are now integrated and accepted into the family for no apparent reason other than this actor wanted to show up for a paycheck. Seriously, I wouldn't be surprised if they wind up making like 5 more of these things if eventually Jason Momoa sits down at the barbecue table with the rest of the family. I'm not going to get into specifics, but there's one case of a character coming back from something in the past that just blew my mind. Even for this franchise, which has done some ridiculous things in the past, I was shocked. And when those things happen, they take me out of the movie, and I'm just like, why am I supposed to take any of this seriously? Because some of it is played for jokes, some of it is played for laughs, but a lot of it is taken seriously, especially Vin Diesel's performance as Dom. He really seems to think that these are genuinely great stories with actual strong themes and good storytelling, and I don't really feel like that's the case. Overall, it's an expensive, really good looking mixed bag. I'm surprised by how good the movie looks and how well it flows, considering at some point during the shoot, I think they didn't have a director after Justin Lin dropped out. I really dig Jason Momoa's performance. He's giving his absolute all here, and there are some fun mindless action sequences, and if that's your thing, all the more power to you. I just feel that it's too repetitive, it's too messy, and there's just not enough here to provide the stakes that this movie needs or to provide something new that they haven't done before. For me, this is going to be a 2.5 out of 5. It really does come pretty close to a 3, honestly. I would cut this one a free pass if maybe it didn't do the ridiculous resurrecting characters from the dead bullshit and a few other shenanigans that I think just sort of bog down the stronger elements of the film. But really, this is definitely better than I thought it was going to be. It's better than the last few Fast and Furious films, in my opinion. If you're a diehard fan of the franchise, you're probably going to have fun with it regardless of what I say. So just take that with a grain of salt. Know that I'm sort of 50-50 with these movies. About half of them I think are okay, and the other half are just boring and mindless. But that's just my take on Fast X. If you have seen the film, do drop down into the comments and let me know what you think of the film. Did you like it? Did you really dislike it? Do you think it's better than F9? Because maybe that's sort of a controversial opinion that F9 is the worst, but that's kind of how I felt about it after watching it. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe if you want to see more videos like this, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching.